Hi, this is Eric. I am the Gray Goat. This is my garage, and we're powered by ombwarehouse.com. Just picked up my brand new Predator 224cc engine. Been a little sick lately too. The 224cc engine, as you'll see in the video, it's a little bit different than the previous Predator 212 and 212 Hemi and non-Hemi engines. This is a non-Hemi head, but the block is made by Ducar, and it's very similar to a lot of the reinforced blocks you see out there by other manufacturers. So we're going to yank the guts out of this thing, and let's get started. First thing we'll do is we're going to take off the muffler. This is just a 13 millimeter wrench and 2 nuts. Well, 3 if you count me. So I've got a box set up already, and I'm just going to throw all these parts in a box. I don't care what they are. We're just going to rip the guts out of this thing anyway. So, but stuff like header nuts, don't lose those. So this is a standard muffler, same thing that you'll see on either the Predators or the GX200 clones, you know, whatever engine out there. It's nothing special, it's nothing different, it's the same muffler. You know, let's face it, Ducar, the manufacturer of this engine, they manufacture engines. They don't make mufflers. So, you know, they're buying them from who's ever making the mufflers for everything else. So I'm going to put these back on. You can see standard size exhaust port in this head. Just by reaching my finger down, I can feel a very pronounced sharp edge in there. So we know we're going to want to port it if we want performance. So we'll get to that later. You'll notice in the box, they actually give you a real nice funnel for the oil, which is at an angle so you can fill the oil easily. So I like that. I'll be using that. And they also give you a fancy spark plug wrench. It also comes with 3 other jets for higher altitude applications, and we don't care about that because we're going to build this engine for performance. I've got a slew of parts coming. I hope I ordered the right parts because this engine is so new, but we'll get this going. And I'm thinking I can make 15-16 horsepower. Your typical LG spark plug, brand new. The more stuff we get out of the way, the better off we'll be. All right, so we can see what's going on. We're going to pull the gas tank, which is a metric 10 millimeter. And you're going to notice this has the angled tank mounts just like the Hemi engine came with. So it's going to take the same clone GX200 top plates. You know, if you're going to run a top plate, not a stock gas tank. So we're going to get to the power tools here in a second. Okay, we need an 8. So then we're going to just undo the screw at the back of the tank. And I save all these little pieces of hardware. Always good to have. I've got a whole box full of metric nuts that they use on these engines now. So this hose here, it's got nice insulation on it. It's going down to an exhaust canister. Not an exhaust canister, it's actually a charcoal canister that gets the fumes out of the air. We're going to take that off real quick as well. Maybe we'll take that off here in a minute. Start with these. Okay, and now we'll pop the side cover off real quick. Just 4 bolts for this. A metric 8 millimeter. You notice I got magnets on these things because I drop stuff a lot. Okay, now to get this cover off, we want to swing the bottom out first. Well, we're going to have to get rid of the low oil sensor and unplug the start-stop switch. These are the instructions that nobody reads. Now it's got some funky magic box on here. It just holds all the wires inside. We don't need that here. Okay. So we're disconnected from the low oil sensor. Standard blower housing. For all you guys with mini bikes that are pulling from the front of your mini bike, just remove the 3 screws, turn this so you can pull it straight up. One of my pet peeves. Okay, you're going to notice on this that there's a very long starter cup on this, and that to me may be some issues, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. Now we can get rid of this, which is the charcoal canister for emissions. Now, unlike the old Predator engines, there's only one 224cc engine, and this engine is good for California and the other 49 states. So that's good news. So there's not a lot of confusion going on with the parts. Here's the owner's manual and the extra jets. They give you O-rings for the carb, sealing washers for the nut on the bottom of the carb, and you know, inside this is actually going to tell you that it's a 5/16 24 thread bolt for the crank. Now, in the picture on Harbor Freight, they show this carburetor with a non-EPA type screw here for the low to mid-range idle adjustment, the air fuel mixture adjustment. These are sealed, so don't think that you're going to get a better carb with this. Okay, let's get the carb off. Okay, standard clone type air filter, nothing to see here, keep it moving. This just slides off. Got some fancy nuts for it though too. So with the carburetor, this is an SP brand carb that will not accept the Ruxing type pilot jets. And here's an easy trick for you. If you want to take your carb off and don't want to disturb anything, just slide it back a little bit. The rod will come out, the spring will come out, the carb's off. So as you can see, it's sealed here, SP brand carb. I'm not going to be using this just because I'm going to go with either a Mikuni or a non-EPA style carb. So this will go into the pile for parts. We've got the typical spacer here, and you'll notice that there's 2 gaskets like all other engines. This spacer is important if you're running a stock carb. If you decide that you're a junior engineer and you leave this spacer out, your engine will never run. You'll have a vacuum leak and you cannot tune around it regardless of how big of a main jet you get put in there. So, all right, so that goes away. All right, now we get the tank off. All right, tank's off. Probably not going to use that either. So I'm going to get everything out of the way that we're not going to need. So, like I said, I just ripped the guts out of them. I'm thinking that this handle right here is going to be an issue with some of the governed throttle linkages that bolt right onto the to the blower housing. We'll have to check that, but worst case scenario, cut it off. That's what I do. Okay, so now standard coil. This is not like some of the engines that are governed electronically through the coil, and you can tell that by the single wire kill switch. So, but it's a little tiny thing. We might be upgrading that as well. All right, and anybody that has seen my videos before knows that I lose stuff, so I'm just going to put these back in real quick so I don't lose them. I probably could re-find them, but I'm lazy. Okay, so let's get to the valve cover. You're going to notice it's the hexagon shaped valve cover, just like a non-Hemi would have. Same non-Hemi valve train. You know, stamp rockers, adjusters, and nuts. Stay. Okay, good. These are the ones I don't like to lose because you can't get these at the hardware store. All right, so standard 1-to-1 ratio rockers. Same 5.260 push rods. Ooh, that one was not very tight. That's not good. See, I didn't even get this on the compression stroke. We're just yanking the guts out of this. Okay, and just like the clone engines, there's only one lash cap, and that is on the exhaust valve. Where you can't get that mixed up. So many guys will send me emails that help at OMB Warehouse and say, hey, I've only got one lash cap. I think I dropped it in the engine. And I say, no, it only came with one. So it's a deep lash cap, but it also indexes into that exhaust valve. So let's pop this head off real quick. And we're going to see what's going on with that. All right, so heads off. This has 27 millimeter intake valve, 25 millimeter exhaust valve. It's got somewhat of a large chamber here, and obviously I'm not that strong, so you know it's a standard 10.8 pound spring, which what most of the world doesn't know is that spring's good to about 5,500 RPMs. Because everybody needs 18-pound springs in a Mikuni carburetor, right? Okay, so let's get out the calipers. 5.42, so it's a 5.5 millimeter stem. So we know what's going on there. It does take the seal like a Predator Hemi would have, not the non-Hemi top hat looking style seal. So we've got some work to do on this head for sure. It's actually pretty clean. On the intake port, there is a little bit of a lip on the short side radius, which is the flat part of the D. So we'll get in here and clean this up. When I port a head, I don't go hog wild and make them big. I'm not running giant carbs, 24 millimeter, 26 millimeter tops. So that port's plenty big enough. We just want to make it flow better. All right. So here's the stock head gasket. And we're going to measure this out at, it's measuring at 46 thousandths. So it is a fairly thick head gasket. But what we have to remember when we're wanting to put a head gasket in this engine is we need that 30 thousandths clearance between the top of the piston and the bottom of the head. Here, this piston, from what I can tell, it's at 0 deck already. So you're not going to want to use extended rods. You're not going to want to use taller pistons, but you're going to want to use a thicker head gasket to maintain that 30 thousandths clearance between the bottom of the piston, the top of the piston and the bottom of the cylinder head. That is to allow for crank flex at higher RPMs. These engines will flex a little bit, and if you build it too tight, you will pop the top off the engine. So you're going to notice on this block, it has this extra piece right here cast in for extra strength in the block. The block also has additional ribbing here for strength, and here, and even at the base. So it's a very strong block, and the great basis for a performance build. So comes with a key, and the key's never built into any crank, so the keys are all removable. All right, let's get this taken off. See what's going on inside here. Well, we know that to get 224 cc's, it's a 70 millimeter bore, but it's a 58 millimeter stroke versus the 55 millimeter stroke. Okay, and now we're going to get the flywheel cup off, and we got to remove the nut on the inside, remove the plastic fan. So, oh, that wasn't very tight. Now, if you don't have this special fancy tool that screws on to the crank like this, don't worry about it. I like tools, so I have fancy tools. What we're going to do is we're going to get this nut onto this crank, and we're going to tighten this down just so this sits above the crank. And to remove the flywheel, we're just going to remove the end play from the crank, and then I'm going to use the big fun hammer. It's not about hitting this hard, it's about giving it a shock. So I'll pull the flywheel out, and that brings the end play of the crank out to this side, and then I'm just going to give it a good whack with the hammer. Okay, that's all there is to it. Flywheel's off. We're not going to use that. Okay, now let's get the side cover off and see what's going on inside. Like no stock flywheels around here. Okay, here we go. Alright, side cover's off. I'd already made a mess earlier because these always come with a little bit of oil in them. I'll go ahead and remove the gasket as well. Don't reuse gaskets, they're cheap and they never seal the same way twice. So standard side cover, standard bearing that works for clones, Predator 212, same thing for this. Pop these lifters out real quick. And especially for mini bikes or go-karts, we never want to use the low oil sensor, because if you go around a corner, the oil sloshes away from the sensor, then the engine's going to shut off. So we'll take that out. It gives me a couple nice screws to use. I believe that's a 14 on the end here. And it's stuck in there pretty good because the crank was in the way. All right. I shouldn't have done this until I got the crank out. Okay, we'll pull it back. All right, we're going to take the rod out now. That's a 10mm wrench. And these will be a little bit snug, not too bad. Okay. All right, let's see if we can get this rotated around a little bit. Get some fat fingers in here. It's nice in February in Southern California when it's 85 degrees outside. You're sweating, now your hands are slippery with oil, and we're taking out rod bolts. That's all right, we've worked through this. We have some liquid refreshment around here somewhere. Some of that good Grey Goat Kool-Aid. To do this, pardon my arms. Oh, that second one's a little tough. There we go. Okay, once I get these bolts out, I'm going to take the cap off, and then I'm going to use the crank to push that piston in the rod up to the top of the cylinder. Makes it a lot easier to get out of there. Might as well use what we have to our advantage. Okay, rod cap's out. Down the other lifter. Rotate the engine, push that rod up as far as you can get. Should have waited on the low oil sensor. So, standard rod, dish piston. For the piston, this is I believe going to be a 550 pin height piston, which is coming in at 570. So this should, well, I don't know. We're going to have to wait till we build the engine. Nope, we're 550 right there. So I'm going to use the Predator 212 Hemi piston in this engine when I build it to get me the right tolerances, clearances, because we have to maintain 30 thousandths between the top of the piston and the bottom of that head. While the extra hot camera was cooling down, I did disassemble the head completely, and when I have a head that I want to have milled, what I will do is I will use my caliper and use the bottom side of it. I'm going to measure how far down the gasket surface is away from that first fin. Right there it's telling me 76 thousandths. It's going to be inconsistent going around the head. We're at 59 thousandths right there. At this point, we're at 52 thousandths. So let's see where we're at here. And we're at 49 thousandths right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this head milled 40 thousandths. So that'll take this surface down to that first fin, but not cut into the first fin. And that'll bump up my compression probably about a point. So 8.5 to 1 to 9 to 1. And get another 0.8 of a point out with the flat top piston. Now's a great time to remove the upper governor rod. Oh, that was hard. And to make sure that you get the washers out. And this is for performance builds. For the governor gear, just like I've been saying all along, you watch those ding-dongs on YouTube Facebook that are experts at this, and they spend 20-30 minutes on the inside of this case trying to get the gear, the little clip off this gear. Well, here in the Grey Goat Garage, we're lazy, so we're just going to do it the easy way. I'm going to lay this block down like this, get the punch I just got out, and right where that governor hole is, you can see where they press the rod into the case. Not a real big hammer. Let's grab Charlie's little ball peen hammer, and the governor gear's out. That was hard. I'm going to go back and I'll plug the top and the side with quarter 20 screws. I use stainless button head Allens with some Loctite, and it'll seal up that block. For the front of the block, I'll tap these 1/4 inch NPT or National Pipe Thread and use a pipe plug on the front of the block. You have to drill it out a little bit to do that, but not hard to do. And the block is apart. One thing I'm noticing about this block, besides the extra strength with the ribbing everywhere, is that it's a pretty clean casting. I'm not seeing a lot of casting flash on the inside. A lot of times with the side cover, especially with the Predator engines, where they cut the threads in here, it's very, very clean. I will clean it up a little bit with a Dremel and a sanding roll, but it is very clean. Chances are you may not have to approach it. I don't want anything inside this engine after a few heat cycles to come apart. So I'll get in and I'll make sure that everything is clean and burr free, and that way I don't cut my delicate hands either. So, you know, a little bit extra time spent on the bottom of the engine always helps you long term. So I'm excited about this. It's going to be a fun little build. I'll keep you all posted as I go along. We have a section on the website right now that has parts known to fit these. Last thing I will mention is that the dowel pins in the head, these are 10mm dowel pins, not like the non-Hemi with 11mm dowel pins. So, you know, we have the option to use just standard gaskets with this and not have to work out the gaskets. I've had some customers call and tell me that the dowel pins were an odd size, and they are 8mm, just like a GX200 or clone engine. So no reason to be alarmed. The only thing about this is it doesn't have an extra dowel pin hole here at the bottom for the ARC billet covers. So if it doesn't have a hole there, don't use the dowel pin. So this will be a fun little engine. I'm sure we're going to make some horsepower out of this. So I can't wait to get started on this. If you have any questions, if you need some help, that's what I do. I am help at ombwarehouse.com. I am Eric. I am the Grey Goat. It's my garage, my rules. Thanks for watching.